I feel that I have to end up doing my own market research and my own market recaps during the end of the week because for the most part, most of the people that I've noticed on the news, and I do watch many different news organizations. If you pay attention to my community chat, you know that I watch British news, Sky News, we own Indian news. I do look at Chinese news. I do look at even whatever we can see of Russian news. But the thing about it is, one thing I've realized about American news is it basically all ends up being owned by like either MSNBC, CNBC, Fox News, ABC, WPIX. Well, you know who these organizations are. And then there's a couple like OAN. And the thing about it is either they're tilted to the left or the right. But what we see, all of us see at the same time, regardless what anybody tells us. I don't need these people to tell me what to think. All I need them to do is tell me the facts. I don't need them to tell me their opinion. I don't need an editorial caricature of what's going on. I just need them to tell me the facts. As you recently heard, inflation is pretty high. I believe they said it's over 9%. I've been saying for over a year that we weren't in inflation periods. We were in stagflation periods. The reason why it's difficult to say something like that is because nobody understands it until they either feel it or until the government tells it to them or until the news media repeats it over and over and over. Recently in the news, you've probably been hearing the term stagflation every now and then, but obviously you've been hearing the terms inflation and you've been hearing the terms recession. I hope that more of you have learned what these terms mean. And I also hope you understand the implications of these terms. This video right here, because I'm going to make this little part short. This video right here, Glenn Beck's interview with David Walker. David Walker was our Comptroller General. Now, this video is back in 2008, obviously after we had or actually, this is right before the financial crisis because this is January 9th, 2008. So this is when we had a buildup to the financial crisis. But if you remember, we didn't actually have a collapse in the stock market until September 15th, 2008, because by that time you had Lehman Brothers fail, and then you had Goldman Sachs being threatened, you had AIG being threatened, so forth and so on. So if you take a look at this video, I did put this in my community chat. Some people probably watched it. Some people probably didn't care. But this video is 14 years old, and I want you to pay very close attention to this. This video only got 986 views. This was 14 years ago when Glenn Beck wasn't on Fox News. This is when he was on MSNBC or something like that. Now, I'm not going to use the video itself because obviously I'd get a copyright flag. But the important thing to me is that this video got less than 1,000 views. The person who posted this must have been a Ron Paul supporter because it says choose Ron Paul. And he must have been a libertarian because he believed that Ron Paul's ideas about keeping America out of war and keeping America out of financial trouble was a good idea. That's basically the libertarian base. They follow people like Ron Paul and Peter Schiff specifically. Peter Schiff has, since this time, I would say, grown to accept even more people who are Democrats and Republicans, or so-called Democrats and Republicans. But the reality is Peter Schiff and Ron Paul are really libertarians for the most part. Now, this was 14 years ago. Less than 1,000 people watched this video. Every single thing that was said in this video has basically come to pass. Every single thing. Specifically, the move towards $30 trillion. Now, mind you, back in 2008, we didn't have this much debt. It was predicted in this video that by now, pretty much, that we'd be above $30 trillion worth of debt, which we are. And it's also was predicted in this video that eventually we would have a serious problem with the economy, specifically because the Federal Reserve wouldn't be able to, how should I say, keep the economy under control. Basically, to make a long story short, because I'm not going to make this too long, and I want you to watch this video if you have a chance. To make a long story short, the problem is that our national debt is over $30 trillion. The problem is that the Federal Reserve controls inflation. It kept inflation too low for too long. 0% interest rates, quantitative easing, low inflation. What that does is it causes credit to be cheap. That means people can easily go out and apply for home loans and get them. That means people can easily go out and apply for car loans and get them. That means that people can easily take out credit cards and get the credit card loans. And when they do, they run up their credit card bills and either they can't pay later or they default. I should also say that low interest rates also mean that student loans are easier to get. All of these loans, all of this credit has finally come back to bite America in the ass. 0% interest is horrible for your economy. 0% interest is basically the same thing as printing money. It's exactly what killed the Weimar Republic. It's just that they didn't do it with credit cards. They did it by literally printing money. This is the same thing, but it's slightly different. Now, the issue is the Federal Reserve right now, as you can see, is rapidly raising interest rates. The reason why they're doing that is because they have no choice. The lower the interest rate, the more inflation increases, because low interest rates basically mean they're printing more and more money. They have to raise the interest rates to reduce the inflation. Here's the problem, though. Because the debt is so high, if you raise the interest rates too high, now you can't pay the debt. It's just like if you have a credit card, you have a monthly payment that you have to pay. If your monthly payment is $100 and you've borrowed, I don't know, $10,000 and your monthly payment's $100, okay, that's not too bad. That's bad, but that's not too bad. But what happens if you owe $1 million and now your monthly payment is $10,000 or something, but your income is only $8,000? Well, now you have a problem because you have a $2,000 deficit. That's where America is right now. They can't raise the interest rates because the national debt would become unpayable. But they have to raise the interest rates because otherwise inflation will become entrenched. This is the reason why I've been using the term stagflation. They don't want to use the term stagflation because they know that it sends signals to people that there's something wrong and that you should stop spending money or stop borrowing money. But the reality is, stagflation is exactly where we are. We've had, here's the problem. The government uses a bad number system to hide the truth about inflation and about the recession too. If it was up to me, what we would do is we'd be measuring the cost of things that we absolutely need. Food, water, shelter, which basically means rent and mortgages. Possibly you could squeeze transportation into that too, but that would get really dicey because some people have cars, some people don't. Some people use mass transit, some people don't. So you're probably better off just focusing on the things that are absolute necessities. Food, water, energy, and possibly rent/mortgage housing. If we went by those numbers instead, we would easily see that inflation is much higher than what they're telling us. But obviously the government's not going to use real numbers because they don't want you to get upset and they don't want you to start crying and shit. Like these people who keep looking to buy a house but they can't afford it, so they walk away crying. So please watch this video if you get a chance. You can tell me what you think after you watch this video. What I really wanted to talk about was this whole idea of repossessions on cars exploding. And that's bad news for everyone. Now, before I even started reading this, and now you're starting to hear more and more about car repossessions. Before I started reading this, I knew that there's basically only two things that were possibly causing car repossessions to jump up. Number one, either it was because unemployment was increasing and people could no longer pay the notes, or it was because people took out loans that they couldn't afford on cars that they never should have had. Now, I've been making jokes about the idea that people were rushing out and buying SRTs and Scat Packs and Dodge Chargers, Dodge Challengers, Hellcats, Trackhawks, so forth and so on during the pandemic, back when gas prices were less than $2 a gallon premium. I've been making jokes about the fact that those gas prices suddenly skyrocketed and went up to $6, in some places $7, and in some places even $8 and $9. But I've been making jokes about that because I told you that something like this could happen. When oil went negative, I told you there was no way oil was going to stay negative because oil is energy. This country is not an electric car country. Our electric car adoption has only just recently passed like 5%. So the reality is the vast majority of the cars in this country are gas cars. There was no way that oil was going to stay low. Planes were grounded. Cruise ships weren't moving. Shipping was reduced because there was less to ship at that time when the pandemic started. The mistake the government made was by giving welfare checks to people. Now, you can call them stimulus checks because, I know you're soft and I know you don't want to hear the word welfare because you know that I'm pointing a finger right at you and saying you got welfare checks. Because the bottom line is I didn't get any. I make $200,000 a year. The cutoff for a single person was like, $94,000, $95,000 a year. I didn't get any. I think if you were married, I think the cutoff was like $185,000 or something, depending upon whether or not you had like 3 or 4 kids. I didn't get any because I didn't have no kids. Not only that, I made too much money as a single guy. So the reality is I was pointing the finger at all of these kids out there who are getting these welfare checks and gambling on cryptocurrency. I was pointing the finger at all these people getting these welfare checks, lining up at the gun store to buy stuff with their welfare checks. Kyle Rittenhouse is one of those people who used his stimulus check to buy a gun. I was pointing at all these people who were using them stimulus checks to go down to Chrysler and buy a fucking Charger or a Challenger, and they knew they couldn't afford it. So let's read part of the story. It says the number of people defaulting on their auto loans is rising quickly, and industry observers on high alert because of it. Not only is the number... Wait, you know what? I knew there was something wrong with that. It says, and industry observers on are high alert because of it. They made a mistake. It was supposed to be are on high alert because of it. That shit tripped me up for a second. Not only is the number of repossessions on subprime loans doubling, the rate of repos of prime loans has also reportedly risen twofold since 2020. Obviously, since the beginning of the pandemic. That's a huge red flag, reports Barron's. Let me skip over. It says part of the reason behind the rising rates of loan defaults has to do with... God damn it! You mean to tell me you people don't read this shit over and have an editor look and see if there's mistakes? These people call themselves... Who is this fucking shit written by Sebastian Bell? I have to wonder if you even spelled your name right. Car Scoops. Oh my God, these people. They don't even edit this shit. So anyway... Jesus Christ. Part of the reason behind the rising rates of loan defaults has to do with buyers gaining temporary increases in income through the pandemic through government stimulus programs. With those programs stopping and inflation rising, more owners are underwater on their loans. Lopez said that he recently bought a Bentley. Well, that right there, that's going to be, a McLaren and 2 Aston Martins that were purchased using PPP money as down payments. So you committed fraud. That's what you did. You used money that was supposed to be Paycheck Protection Program. You know what that money was for? That money was to make it so you didn't have to lay off your fucking workers. That money was not so you could go out and buy a Lamborghini Urus, or so that you could be on Facebook and Instagram flashing cash. Oh yeah, look at me, I've got piles of cash like Floyd Mayweather. That's not what that money was for. That money was for you to help your workers. You know what the goddamn shame? During the pandemic, I actually know a woman, business owner. Now, she is one of my clients. She asked me to help her because she wanted to shop for a computer. So I went with her to shop for a computer. Now, I was able to look and see how much money she had in her account. This woman had $700,000 in cash in her bank account. She owns a business. She basically sent her employees home without pay and told them that, she'd try to rehire them when business picked back up. What she didn't do and what she wasn't going to do was she wasn't going to take a PPP loan to keep paying them whatever money they were making as a salary. So she basically just got rid of them, laid them off. Now, that's pretty cold. It's a savvy business move because she didn't want to go into her own pocket and she didn't want to take out a government loan. It's pretty sad and it's pretty cold what she did, but I understand why she did it. And she's walking around with over $700,000 still in her pocket because she did it. But that's just how some people are. But there's other people, and what they did was they took these PPP loans or they took those stimmy checks and they used them for shit that they never should have had them in the first place for. Stimulus checks to buy fucking cryptocurrency. Stimulus checks to buy fucking guns. Stimulus check to buy video games. Stimulus check to gamble in the stock market. Those welfare checks are part of the reason why everything was so inflated. And guess what? What's funny is it actually bit some of you in the ass because if you were stupid enough to put that money into cryptocurrency, or if you were stupid enough to go into fucking Reddit stocks and buy GameStop and AMC, you probably lost that money. Because the funny thing to me, and I mentioned this in my videos, but obviously YouTube suppresses important information just like this Comptroller General. What I was saying was I figured that what they were doing was they were timing the stimulus checks and they were timing the tax returns around the stock market. And what they were doing was figuring that they could get your dumbasses to take your money and quote unquote invest it. The real word is gamble. And I was trying to tell people, don't do it. Stay away from it. Oh no, we gonna get rich. We going to the moon. I'm gonna put my money in AMC. We gonna be sitting on the moon. We going to the moon. We going to Pluto. That's what you told me. You know what you told me? We going to Jupiter. Well, from what I can see, y'all didn't make it to Jupiter. You didn't make it to Pluto. You didn't make it to the moon. And as far as I can see, you're still on Earth right here with me. So anyway, it wasn't all bad loans, though. Lopez said he also bought a Chevrolet. This is fucked up. He also bought a Chevrolet Silverado that had been repossessed from a borrower with pretty good credit. He had a 700. And to tell you the truth, 700 is not a good credit score. In order to have pretty good credit, you really need to be at 750. You really want to be between 750 and 780 to have pretty good credit. Who was only able to make 2 payments. So you mean to tell me an idiot went out there, bought a Chevy Silverado, and they could only make 2 payments, and then they gave the truck up? That's pathetic. The default rate can't all be blamed on stimulus, though. Pamela Fuhay, a law professor at the Cardozo School of Law at Yeshiva University, warned last year that there was an auto loan crisis brewing before the pandemic hit. Outstanding auto loans were at record levels, and delinquencies were hitting record levels every quarter before 2020. Just as the bubble was set to burst, though, the government's pandemic response meant that the bottom didn't quite fall out of the market. The market, however, looks set to burst yet again, she told Barron's. So it probably goes on to talk about who's screwed and who's not. But you get the gist of what I've just read. The simple fact is, the reason why I talk about the term stagflation is because first of all, stagflation has a couple of parts. First of all, one of them is high unemployment. I would include high underemployment. And the reason why I say that is because the government's numbers only represent people who are looking for a job but not in the system. If you go and you get on the line and you file unemployment, that's when you're counted. If you aren't looking for a job, you're not counted. Now they say employment is doing really well. They say the employment is doing really well. However, they also say that the labor participation rate is low. The reality is there's a lot of people who are underemployed, which means that they're working jobs that aren't paying all the bills. So what do? They end up getting a second job. That might be for instance, that might be, let's say, a teacher, a policeman, or a firefighter who also has to drive Uber because he's not making enough money on the first job. Or let's say you have, I don't know, a teacher who she's a teacher and she's not making enough money, so she's also a stripper on the side at Hooters or something like that. I'm just making it up. But that's what I'm saying when I say underemployment. Then the other issue is that there's a recession and the government is losing money basically for like a bunch of consecutive quarters or something. The reality is the government's not telling you the real numbers. They only just now told you it was 9%. And even then, their CPI, or their consumer price index, is all messed up. So again, I say that if we were just measuring food, water, and shelter, you'd have totally different numbers than what they're putting out. So, I love actually talking about this, but to tell you the truth, the sad thing is it's exhausting because you basically say, like, the Comptroller's video only got 1,000 hits. If you only got 1,000 views out of, like, 330 million people, then it didn't get to the people it needed to get to so the people would pay attention and understand. So if you're being censored on YouTube or you're being shadow banned or whatever, and the only people who are getting their voices through are people who are basically fakes and crypto gurus and those losers, or advertisers who are paying money just to get heard, then the reality is you can talk to your blue in the face and nobody hears it. So I'm not too worried about it. I already have told you what I'm doing with my money. So that's like the last part of it. For some reason, no matter how many times I answer this question, I guess it's because it's newcomers to my channel. They always ask me, who do I trade with? I've said this about 1,000 times, but because I understand that they're newcomers, I'll say it again. I use, for my YouTube portfolio that I do share, I use TD Ameritrade. I started this account. It was an experiment to see how much money I could make using $5,000, and I ended up making $35,000. So if you look through my videos, you'll see that I made so much money with oil that I was easily able to see $2,000 and $3,000 returns. Basically, I was seeing returns as if I had bought like cryptocurrency in the very beginning. I specifically share a list of my dividend earners. Now, the Dow Jones is down about 6,000 points from the high that it was less than a year ago. However, above 31,000, it's still doing pretty good. And the strongest companies, the ones that I go for that all pay dividends, the ones that I own shares in, those continue to pay me round the clock weekly. Some dividends come in during certain parts of the month, and others you get like during like April, some you get in January, some you get in February. But the bottom line is I'm always seeing money coming back just because I'm holding these shares. To some extent, it's kind of like a glorified bank account. See, if you put it in those terms, holding dividend stocks gives you more interest on your money than a bank account does. Because obviously the interest in a bank account is not that great. It's like less than 1% typically. Maybe 1% if you're lucky, or if you have a very high interest savings account. But when you own lots and lots of shares, the dividend you get is per share. So, for the most part, the dividends tend to be, in many cases, high enough to justify owning multiple shares. I personally don't get scared during a recession. I don't sell my dividend stocks. But my TD Ameritrade is a perfect example of my dividend stocks. So, the main companies that I do hold are companies that you recognize right away. So, if I increase the dividend to show you what the top dividend is, it's Sunoco with 8.96%, AT&T, Verizon, BP, Gilead, Citigroup, ExxonMobil, Shell, Chevron. As you can pretty much guess, and I've said this a lot, but I know there's newcomers. I think I added like 400 new people or something recently. What it is that oil companies and banks tend to have the strongest dividend payments, and they also tend to have the highest dividend percentage. So if you are new to putting money into investing, my recommendation, first and foremost, for the time being, is oil and banks. And the reason why is because oil is energy. Energy is the ability to do work. As Europe is going to find out this winter, fucking with another country that supplies you with oil, natural gas, and coal is not a good idea. Russia right now is shutting down a main pipeline between itself and Germany for maintenance. However, the Europeans are afraid that Russia might try to start some shit and might not give them oil since they all decided to double down on their support of Ukraine. We will know what it looks like, but me personally, I'm seeing in my crystal ball that this winter a lot of Europeans are going to freeze their asses off. And we'll see if I'm right or wrong, but something tells me Europe's in a lot of trouble because Ukraine was a major grain supplier and food supplier and wheat supplier. They called it Europe's breadbasket. Russia is Europe's gas company for the most part. You could call it what you want. But Europe was mostly getting its oil, coal, natural gas from Russia. Russia and its Siberian holdings and its holdings near the Arctic Circle is vast. They were saying, I think it's like 24,000 square kilometers or something like that. It's vast. And they could pump, Russia could do nothing but pump oil all day long. And they have a smile on their face and they dancing and they're doing that dance where they kicking their feet out and they got the bear hat on and they got the bears dancing around them and everything. If I was Russian and I'm pumping that kind of gas money, that's all I'd have to do and I'd be happy. So the reality is I think Europe's in big trouble. The euro has shrank against the dollar. Everything has shrank against the dollar, in fact, but the euro has shrank against the dollar. The pound has shrank against the dollar. Governments are collapsing. Boris Johnson resigned. Sri Lanka just had its January 6th. They ran up in the president's house and they said, you got to get out of the house. Pakistan is having their problems. They may do the same shit that Sri Lanka did. So what I'm saying is a lot of these countries that look stable now, I believe, and you can quote me because I really think it's coming. We're already seeing it. There's going to be a lot of civil unrest this winter. But me, you know what I did? I bought a couple of guns. I'm keeping guns in my house loaded just in case I ever get the knock on the door. Like people see that, I've got stuff and they try to get up in my house. Now we're not having that. But the unrest won't really be in America. Now, I'm just preparing. I'm preparing, just doomsday prep, just in case it is. The real danger is going to be Europe. There could be a lot of civil unrest. There could be a lot of craziness. There could be wars breaking out. We just don't know. But when you fuck with oil and gas, keep in mind, the sanctions that America has put on Russia, those same sanctions are what caused Japan to bomb Pearl Harbor. Soon as you start fucking with a country's oil and gas, that usually causes them to lash out. And, hey, listen, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I've already predicted there's a possibility you could have massive civil unrest come November. If the Republicans retake the House and the Senate, you could see Biden resign immediately because he's afraid he's going to get impeached. And you could also see a Trump presidency in 2024. It's a possibility. But we'll see, because he hasn't said he's running. So we just don't know. Because if he doesn't say he's running, then I can't say he's going to be president. I just can't say it. But as for the stock market, with Republicans in charge, the stock market should do pretty well because Republicans have pro-business, anti-welfare, anti-stimulus attitudes. So I'm not being scared out of any of my positions. I have 3 main accounts: Charles Schwab, TD Ameritrade, E-Trade. I'm not being scared out of anything. I'm holding, just like these cryptocurrency losers, holding. Like they can hold on for dear life all they want. They ain't never getting to the moon, or Jupiter, or Saturn, or Pluto, or Neptune. So that's just what it is. But my recommendation to you, because oil has started to draw back, because the government has released oil out of the strategic oil reserve, and because the states have pretty much suspended gas tax in order to cut back on the price of a gallon of gas, that's not going to last forever. Keep in mind, the strategic oil reserve, they're going to stop tapping that eventually. And those gas taxes that they've suspended are going to cause deficits to rise. New York State, where I live, says that by December, they might have a $600 million deficit. So oil has cut back a little, but don't expect it to stay that way. So just mark my words. So if you really want to get involved in the stock market, you're just starting out, buy banks. Buy shares in banks that you know, banks that you trust. You can also go after other dividends, such as, obviously the gasoline companies, not the oil companies, the gasoline companies, like Sunoco, Exxon, Shell, Chevron, so forth and so on. There's a difference between the oil miners and the gas companies. Now, the gas companies do oil mining themselves. It's just that some of these companies, they're not gas companies. They're really energy companies, oil discovery, coal, so forth and so on. So I really think there's going to be major fluctuations in the energy market come winter because with this situation with Russia and Ukraine, we've already seen what that did to our gas prices. My oil stock went through the roof because of Russia, Ukraine. And you're feeling it when you go to the pump right now. Some people are so happy that gas right now on average is below $5 a gallon. The reality is it's still $2 higher than what you should be paying. So you shouldn't be celebrating. There are other companies, tech companies, that have heavy subscription services. Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon. Google, at the end of today, Google did they fulfilled the stock split. So if you had one share of Google, it became 20. So they did a 20-to-1 stock split. I'm going to make this quick. I'm not going to talk about this too long. Other energy companies and tech companies that are worth it, like GE and whatnot, NVIDIA. Now, the thing about it is I bought into a lot of these companies back when the stock market was definitely lower, like years ago. So if you're buying it now, it's going to cost you more than it cost me. However, if you want to build your portfolio, you've got to start somewhere. That's just what it is. The Federal Reserve is going to continue to rise. They're going to keep raising these interest rates. They have no choice, as I said. But there's only so far they can raise them before they have to stop, because at a certain point, the national debt, they can't pay it. So, they've put themselves into a box. That's basically what it is. So those are my dividend earners. The only other thing that I can think is I made myself an index with very specific stocks: Microsoft, Apple, NVIDIA, Amazon, Google, oil, and Tesla. And that was my index. That's my personal index fund. I call it Man-Goat. Tesla, however, I have to say, Elon Musk is an asshole. And I did a video about this. I I have a hard time recommending Tesla while he's still the CEO. He's gotten worse and worse and worse. We find out he's knocking up employees. He's having twins with one, he's having babies with the other. It's like when I bought this stock in 2012, I never imagined that we'd be where we are right now with him. I just never imagined it. When I bought this stock, I didn't even know who he was. The only thing I knew about the company was the car. And that is what caused me to invest because I knew that the car was going to do well. I never realized that this guy was an asshole. And now he's going to lose a lot of money to Twitter. I don't know if that's going to have after effects on Tesla. But right now, as far as I'm concerned, Tesla is about $500 to $600 off from where it should be. But as time goes on, Tesla's facing more and more opponents because everybody's making electric. Everybody's moved towards making electric cars. As time goes on, all of the major automakers are going to basically be in electric cars. They're also going to, and one other thing that you need to understand about these electric cars, I have the stocks for that are called tech. One thing you got to understand about electric cars is that these things are not just cars. These things are basically computers on wheels, and they carry subscription services with them. BMW is trying to charge people, I think it was like $18 or some shit per month or a year or something like that for the heated seats. And there's a lot of people who are upset with BMW, rightfully so, because they don't like the idea of them charging them for features that are already in the car. They're basically charging you just to turn the feature on. And they're treating it as if it's like XM radio. Now, a lot of these car companies are coming up with subscription services. And one of the things that I realized, especially while I was driving my uncle and his children around in his Ford Expedition, is that when these kids start up, Daddy, I want to watch Frozen 2, and Daddy, I want to watch The Lion King 3 and all that. When they start up that shit, you as a parent, like there's some parents who would be like, listen, shut the fuck up or I'm going to come back there and give you something to cry about. But then there's other parents who immediately just say, oh, don't worry. Oh, wait, you know what? Let me pull over the car and make sure the DVD's playing or let me make sure that the SD card's playing. But in the future, it ain't going to be DVDs and SD cards. They're going to be looking for, just like this Grand Wagoneer, they're going to be looking for you to pay for Amazon Fire TV on the go. They're going to be looking for you to pay 4G and 5G internet on the go. They're going to expect you to be taking out, subscription services to watch, for your kids to be able to watch those monitors, whatever it is they playing. And your kids are going to relentlessly attack you until you subscribe. You ain't got a choice. Then there's other features like BMW with the heated, cooled seats. They're making you pay for that shit. Then there's other features like, oh, Tesla. Oh, you want full self-driving? Yeah, well, you got to pay us $10,000 or some shit. Or you got to subscribe to us. These cars are going to treat you just like the apps on your cell phone do. And these companies see that now and know that now, and it's coming for you in the future. Mark my words, all of these companies are going to do it. Ford, for example, said, you know what? We're not going to allow you to outbuy your lease on if you have a Mustang Mach-E. We're going to take that car back and we're going to resell it as a used car. Who's to say Tesla won't do some shady shit like that? Who's to say anybody won't do it? Who's to say BMW and Mercedes won't do it? Rough times are coming. I can already see it. I can already feel it. I can already smell it. It's coming, and it's coming for you. So all I can say is right now, electric cars and the companies making them, especially the main companies like GM, Ford, Stellantis, Mercedes, BMW, Volkswagen, the main parent companies, if you can buy into their stocks, do so. Because as time goes on, their stocks are going to continue to go up, just like they have done over the past 5 years. In general, they've all gone up. The only companies that haven't gone up are the companies that went bankrupt in 2008 or the companies that were sold off or ended in 2008. But for the most part, all of these things have risen in appreciation. But now you're facing a future where your car is basically an iPhone or an Android phone. And now you got to pay just to keep the apps running. Just think about that because it's coming and it's coming for your wallet. Now, I know there's a lot of you, oh man, I'll never pay that. I would never pay. Yeah, I've heard everybody say the same shit about these television channels, Disney Channel, Paramount, Netflix, HBO. Yeah, everybody says that shit, but in the end of the day, sooner or later, they get that phone call and they end up subscribing one way or another. Like everybody I know, the penny pinches, I go to their house, they got all these freaking channels, they're paying extra money for it. I'm like, I thought you weren't going to buy that. You said you weren't going to buy it. They'll be like, yeah, well, I mean, they offered me a package deal. They said all I had to do was pay $400 a month and I'd get it all. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, y'all keep fooling yourselves. Y'all think, yeah, I would never pay Tesla for self-driving. Yeah, okay, yeah, right, Sooner or later, the call comes, a coupon comes, a discount comes, and you'll find yourself right in it. Oh, yeah, I'd never pay that kind of money for Netflix. Next thing you know, Squid Games Season 2 comes out. Oh, I got to see this. Yeah, Netflix, sign me up. Yep, that's exactly what happens. So, you know what? I've ranted and raved for long enough. That's my market recap. That's my economic data for the week. Things are looking pretty grim in the long run, but the bottom line is if you're invested in dividend-paying stock, you don't really have to look over your portfolio shoulder every single night and worry because as long as those companies are still paying dividends, they're still profitable. They're not going anywhere. But as for you losers with this cryptocurrency bullshit, yeah, chances are you're going to lose every freaking dime or you're going to be holding worthless bags. You're going to have bags of tulips that nobody wants to buy. And that's just that. So that's all I had to say. Until the next video, that's all I had to say basically right there. So please, questions, comments, criticisms, feel free to put that in the URL section below. But I noticed I haven't been getting as many criticisms as I used to get from the people who used to call me up and say, yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about cryptocurrency, because back when cryptocurrency was 60,000, I might be the one person who I know who was saying this shit ain't never going to 100,000. You're not going to the moon. You're not going to Jupiter. You're not going to Pluto. Back then, I got all types of criticism. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You should stick to cars. You don't know what you're talking. Yeah, And then when it went to 50, and then 40, and then 30, and then Nayib Bukele, El Salvador, Tesla, they lost more than half of their money. They lost 60% of their money. All of a sudden, the criticism stopped. All of a sudden, those little emails you'd get saying you didn't know what the fuck you were talking about, all of a sudden, I was looking forward to those emails. All of a sudden, they stopped. All those criticisms, those negative comments. Oh, man, I was looking forward to them because usually when somebody would say, yeah, you don't know what you're talking about, stick to cars. Usually I'd start typing. I'd be like, fuck you. Who do you think you fucking are? You're dumb. You're poor. Now I don't even get those comments anymore. I really miss those comments. I love getting them. I love getting them when Bitcoin was like 50,000 and they said it was going to 100,000. I don't get those comments anymore. All those people just disappeared into thin air. I used to love getting those comments because at least I knew people were listening. But now it's like all my criticism, man, they just poof, gone, disappeared like fairy dust. Tickle, tickle, tickle in the air like little fairies. Bye-bye. That's it. They just disappeared. Bye-bye. Gone. Quiet. You could hear a mouse piss on cotton. All those criticisms gone. Poof. Goodbye. Bye-bye. All the people I was arguing with about V-Chain. Oh, yeah, V-Chain, 30 cents. Now we're going to the moon. Well, nah. Just disappeared. Bye. Gone. Just gone. Goodbye. Gone. Poof. Tinkle, 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 fairy dust. Bye-bye.
To be continued.